I think I've had the concept of motive or motives on my mind, as that is the thrust of our topic today. And I'll begin from the simple to the more complicated. I was parked today on a busy street, and when I was ready to leave, nobody was letting me in. Finally, someone did, but I guess I was a little suspicious. So as I began to drive away, I looked in my rear view mirror and my suspicions were confirmed. The only reason the person let me in was he wanted that spot.
Good enough,
Okay.
policeman.
The second, I had been food shopping. I get home and I have several bags and I'm taking them to the car, to the door of the building, and a young girl, and she looks familiar, but not so familiar. I'm not sure, but she's there with another girl who definitely looks familiar. And the one who doesn't look familiar is holding the door open as I bring in all the bags. And they knock on the door on the main floor.
Esther, you have two things on. Esther, it's from you.
And she knows, look.
It's an echo of some sort.
It's from having two devices on at the same time. They're
Yeah.
getting feedback.
Yeah, Esther, you're on mute. You can only have one device on.
Yeah, I can see you're looking to be admitted again, but you're already on.
Yeah.
Anyway, you have to know what happened with this terribly important story. So they knock on the door and a mother comes out and I say to her, pointing to the one who's unfamiliar to me, is that your daughter? And she's looking at me, assuming that I'm going to say that's also something, that I'm going to say something bad. And she says, no, she's a friend of my daughter's. So then I said immediately, well, they did something really nice, even though it was her daughter's friend. Now, what was my motive in doing that? I'm not sure if I just wanted to make a mother feel good, or it was because a couple of months after I moved into this apartment, which is over 3 years ago, I'm outside on our Mirpeset and without thinking, poured water with the hose onto underneath their yard. And what was in the yard? Newly hung laundry. And I felt miserable, and so much so her husband actually called up. So ever since then, I've been trying to be nice, and I think we have warmed up to each other. So that might have been my motive. The final tale, and if I had told you this story yesterday, I would have mentioned the name of the person. But today, because of something I heard, I'm going to tell you anonymously. So yesterday I'm watching the news and they are showing an Israeli woman who both is a host on some shows and a model. And she has flown to the Ukraine with a group, you might have heard of them, Zaka, which is a group that has the unfortunate task of when people are blown to pieces, et cetera, or just killed, that they have the mitzvah of putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
And she decided she is going to join this group and went to the Ukraine. She just says, I felt that I had to go with them. Now, why they were talking about this is because she had a special role as opposed to dead people. She was helping an Israeli couple here who had been dealing with a surrogate
Yes,
for a child that
Yes.
was just born in the Ukraine,
yes.
and they didn't know how they were now going to get this newborn back to Israel. Well, this woman, this model was able to be very, very helpful. And thank God the baby arrived and in the parents, the mother and father's arms. Now, the only reason I said that I'm saying this anonymously now is that for some reason today, I hear people wondering, what is she really doing there? Why is she doing this, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know, but it saddened me that there's a need to question what her motives were. However, who knows? And now let's continue. Or let's start with 4 questions. And please, in wanting to answer them, and please do, unmute yourself. So, when is the ideal time to initiate a rebellion against a ruling power? I'll repeat that. When is the ideal time to initiate a rebellion against a ruling power? Anyone? Remember, I don't necessarily see you, so just speak out.
I would say when the power is weak. When the leader
And
is
the ruling
showing a
power
weakness.
is weak. Okay, that is one time. Anybody else? Interesting, Bev.
When the power is trying to destroy somebody or a race or a people or.
Okay, that's being very utopian, meaning that whenever we see a ruling power doing something unjust, we should automatically go after them.
No,
Interesting.
I didn't say do, I said destroy.
Mm,
Right.
no, but I hear you that, okay. Anybody else? A very different answer, actually. Bev and Frida have chosen to look at what state the ruling power is in. But what's another way of looking at it?
Look at what your state is. Are you capable of mounting some kind of a rebellion?
Okay, Michael, that's true. Are you in a position to? Yes. And I'm still looking for something a little different.
She can't see you, Gloria, so just answer.
Gloria?
Okay, now can you hear me, Stevie? I'm taking a different take on it. I think you're going to take the temperature of the people that you're with, whether they're with you or against you. If you're a sole person trying to do this on his own without any backup, without the people behind you, it's an exercise in futility. Look at what's happening with the Ukrainians.
Thank you, Gloria. We've now had, I think, 4 different answers.
Yeah,
Esther?
Bracha, I think sometimes ein b'rera. You have no choice and you have to react.
Okay, a 5th answer. All right. It's also when you want to fight that ruling power, you take a look at the community, the people, the nation, and you see what state they're in. Why is that important? Because you're hoping you're going to be able to convince them to be part of this rebellion. And if we remember last week, and what we're talking about, the episode of KORACH this week is right after the episode of the scouts, the Meraglim, and we know what happened there. They've been wandering, and now they're told, even if it is only in the second year, that they're not going to make it, that generation. So imagine how you would feel. They're demoralized. Their plan of reaching the promised land and entering it has been derailed. So you have to know, somebody did say you have to know where the people are at. Very much so. Second question. What is the most annoying thing for you when you are involved in a dispute and you're sitting across from the person you're disputing? Again, what is the most annoying thing for you when you are involved in a dispute and you're sitting across from the person you're disputing?
When I don't know what to
Rita.
ask, when I don't have the right words to answer them.
When I know that a person is not listening.
Okay, two different answers. So Frida said she's at a loss. She doesn't know how to respond to them. And Esther said when they're not even listening. Anybody want to add to that?
Another one
would-
is when you say something that is so logical and they simply either don't get it or they don't want to hear it. Like it's totally, their response is so illogical that you kind of throw your hands up and say, what am I doing arguing with this person?
All of you have pointed to the issue of not having proper communication. And that can involve what Esther said, not listening to one another. Also, we might say it's when you're speaking at somebody and not to somebody. And also when somebody just isn't willing to sit down with you. Okay, third question. Obviously, all of this is to get us into what we will be discussing. What bothers us most about election speeches? What bothers us most about election speeches?
The lies.
Bev
Promises
said
that they'll
it
never
very
keep.
precisely. The
Promises
lie
that they'll never keep.
that they will never keep. Simone and Norman, did you just join or were you here before at the beginning?
No, we came in a little late, not much late.
Then you missed my Mazal Tov.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
The insincerity.
Insincerity, insincerity. Okay, yafeh. And the final question for now. Is our tradition opposed to arguments, to debate?
Absolutely not.
No. I would argue with you there. No. You're right. You're right.
You know, Bracha,
Absolutely not. Now,
you know.
we have all kinds of suggestions, and we will see one, how to go about debating and arguing. But in fact, if you look, one of the greatest, profoundly great things about the Talmud is, you look at the Talmud, you don't just get a concise one sentence answer, what is the law, like the Shulchan Aruch, but you actually see each debater's opinion. Even if you ultimately choose one, but you see the thoughts that each one is sharing. We definitely believe in arguing,
Bracha,
studying together in chevruta. That complements because you supplement each other. I think of something, you think of something, and we talk it out, sometimes even fight it out. But it helps us understand things better. Esther, yes.
I was thinking of the movie Yentl. When she dresses like a boy and she gets to the yeshiva, the Rosh Yeshiva says, I'm not looking for students with answers. I'm looking for students with questions.
Yes, yeah,
And
very good.
That says it all.
That says it all. Some wonderful songs there.
Yeah.
And there's a great line, if I remember, I haven't seen it in decades, when somebody there, I don't know, it's Yenta, is accused of being pensive. And she says, no, I was just thinking. Okay.
I love that.
Now I'm choosing to begin with the sages' review, the rabbis' review, evaluation of KORACH, our key character, one of our key characters today, even before we read the narrative, which isn't something I usually do. And then together, let's uncover supporting evidence for their opinion. Okay, so I'm going to share. Oops. No. Something just came up. I don't want that. Sorry. Okay. So I'm sure you're familiar with this Mishnah from Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avot. Any dispute that is for the sake of heaven is destined to endure. One that is not for the sake of heaven is not destined to endure. Which is a dispute that is for the sake of heaven? The disputes between Hillel and Shammai. Which is a dispute that is not for the sake of heaven, l'shem Shamayim? The dispute of KORACH and all his company. So first of all, what does it mean to say that a dispute is for the sake of heaven? Anybody? What do we mean by that?
It means that both sides are trying to find the truth.
Both sides, exactly, Michael. They're trying to find the truth. They're not looking one to be the winner for victory.
And
Both parties are united by one purpose, not for personal advancement. Yes.
And they respected each other.
They respect each other. They argue, you can argue and still respect each other. Now, looking at the Mishnah again, the last couple of lines there, the dispute between Hillel and Shammai, which is a dispute that is not for the sake of heaven, the dispute of KORACH and all his company. Is there something odd there? There's a disparity between the characterizations of the disputants. What do I mean?
in the first part, Bracha, both of the disputants are named. And so you see that they're looking at both sides of the coin. In the one about KORACH, it's really self-interest.
Okay, Yafeh, good. Because the dispute of KORACH, that's one of the, also that we would have thought that it would have said the dispute of KORACH and Moshe, just as it says Hillel and Shammai who disagreed, that this would have been between KORACH and all his company.
Also, the reason for the dispute is also different. KORACH's dispute is for power, Hillel and Shammai is the interpretation of.
No, that's what the rabbis are saying, that it's clear that when Hillel and Shammai, as Michael said, were arguing, it was because they wanted the truth. Now, they had certain issues sometimes, everybody does, as opposed to KORACH, and we'll see that, which it was felt that his rebellion was not for appropriate, good reasons. And that's why it's lo l'shem shamayim. Now, we're going to turn to the narrative, but just before we do, I want us to look at what our author, Rabbi Nataf, says. What motivates KORACH? Is it his lineage, a Levite, a Levi who was skipped over for priestly distinction? So maybe he's motivated by jealousy. But Nataf says that's not the essential issue. Rather, how he forges with a large political base. We can glean the role of the general public in the political process. In other words, he says, KORACH is only a vessel that allows the Torah to comment on the popular political arena. Not so much information regarding KORACH, because the Torah is more interested in us keeping our eyes on the bigger picture and its ramifications for the Jewish polity. What to look for in choosing leaders? What's the proper role of the public in the political arena? So here we have a narrative from so long ago, which was foreshadowing a situation that still exists today. So
I think many stories in the Torah are just for an example as an ethical lesson.
Of course, absolutely.
It is one of them too, in my mind.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's begin. KORACH, the son of Ishar, the son of Koh, the son of Levi, took along with Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliav, and On, the son of Pelet, descendants of Reuven. So here we have a few individuals mentioned who are joining KORACH, or who he has brought together to rebel. Now, look at that again. There is something a little odd. KORACH, the son of Izhar, the son of Koah, the son of Levi, took. What's missing from took? There's no object. What did he take? Now, there are some who say what he took was he assumed, different commentators try to explain Vayikach, what did he take? That he assumed that he had the right to question Moshe. Others say that he took others with him to stand against Moshe and Aharon. Now, Datan and Aviram, who were brothers, were from the tribe of Reuven. And it's important to keep that in mind, not Leviim. Okay, now, if we go on, how do they approach Moshe? Not in the same way that some others have, i.e., respectfully. They confronted Moses together with 250 men from the children of Israel, chieftains of the congregation, representatives of the assembly, men of repute. Again, just like with the scouts, we see that the people who are involved in this are a variety of people, but they're being called leaders of their community, chieftains. 3, they assembled. First it was Vayakumu, they confronted. Now they assembled and that's in a negative way, against Moses and Aaron, and said to them, you take too much upon yourselves. Now, this isn't you take too much upon yourselves, meaning that you work too hard. It means you've given yourself too much importance, too much honor. For the entire congregation are all holy, and the Lord is in their midst. So why do you raise yourselves above the Lord's assembly? Now, let's look carefully at this. Pasuk Gimel, the third pasuk. When he says, Korach, you take too much upon yourselves for the entire congregation, what should be there instead of are? Congregation is what?
It's singular.
It's a singular noun. So it should say the entire congregation is. And in the Hebrew, it says kulam, kadoshim. All are holy. Now, what's a little strange about that? Korach again, he is saying with anger, how dare you put yourselves above everybody else? Every one of us is kadosh. What is strange about that? Or not just strange, but wrong, inappropriate.
But Moses didn't pick. Moses and Aaron were picked.
Okay, so that's one thing, that when you're criticizing, when you're saying this, you have to beware that they didn't choose it themselves. God chose them. We know that. Moses didn't want to have anything to do with it. So that's the first thing. But now I'm asking, and this is all to get a sense of what Korach is all about. What is the problem with him making that statement? Every one of Bnei Israel is kadosh. And he doesn't say is. When he says are, he is saying individually. He's not looking at the nation as a whole, but he is looking at each individual. And it's suggested that that's because he's concerned with himself as an individual, not the entire nation. But there's something else. What is wrong with him making that assertion, everyone is holy?
I think the fact that he's a Kohen gave him that chutzpah.
Well, perhaps, but that's not, we know he's angry, he's perhaps jealous. But again, people, I'm asking, and I know you can come up with it. What is wrong with the statement, Kol ha'edah kulam kadoshim?
Just recently before that, these people sinned terribly by accepting the spies. And now you're saying they're all holy. It's sort of, does that mean God's wrong?
Okay, Michael, good. So first of all,
there was
that,
there was
and the Egel HaZahav, the golden calf, we know that not everybody is holy. Yes, but something even more than that. I'm going to give you another few seconds for somebody else to think of. Beyond the fact that they've actually done a couple of things, as Michael said recently, that shows not everybody is holy. What else?
They doubted not all Jews. There were a lot of Egyptians that were included there.
Okay, but that's not.
Okay, Bracha. So I'm going to say that nobody is perfect, so that no one is ever entirely holy.
Okay, Merle.
Fine.
Okay. What Korach is doing is something very, very serious. He is saying that when God said in Vayikra, in the book of Leviticus, to you, Kedoshim, you will become holy. KORACH is negating that, and he's saying it's not a process, it's not an aspiration, but we all are there. Now,
Bracha, the other thing is, he's beginning this whole discussion, if you want, in quotes, I'll put it in quotes, with a personal attack.
Yes.
So he's not coming, he's denigrating Moshe, and he is attacking him on a personal basis, which is no way to start a discussion b'shem Hashemayim.
Well, that's exactly it. And that's why the rabbis use him as an example of not being l'shem shemayim. A person can speak, and maybe he could have even said part of what he's saying, not everything, but with a different tone.
He's negating what God said.
Absolutely. Usually, when somebody says something against Moshe, we understand that it's not personally against Moshe, but it goes beyond that because Moshe was chosen by God. So, what's important about the fact, just as a bit of an aside, when KORACH says we are already holy, he's also, as I see it, not just speaking against Moshe, not just speaking against God, but he's also speaking against us human beings. Because if we are already holy, if we've achieved that, then what's left for us to do in this world? Because one of the things that keeps us going is a sense that we are always trying to build and better ourselves and the world. So KORACH hasn't thought this through enough. In other words, he should realize that he's indicating that his motives are not pure. Now, let's go on. Moshe heard and fell on his face. Why would Moshe have fallen on his face? I think precisely because of what he's hearing, that it is a denial of the divine origin of his mission. Now, what is KORACH doing? When he says, and the people hear him, everyone's around there, when they hear him say, everyone is holy, what is he hoping to achieve?
You know what? He's using, I hate to bring this analogy in, but he's using a Trumpian effect. In other words, he's going out to the people and saying, you're great, and let's make America great again. We're great, and you know what? There's no work to be done.
He is
being a
flattering
demagogue.
them. He is flattering them. And wouldn't you want to be flattered? He wants to be popular. He wants to be popular.
Bracha, I'm very particular who I get my compliments from.
Of course. A compliment is only worth who it's coming from.
So.
Okay. Did you want to?
No, that's why I said the value of KORACH compliments is not valid in my eyes.
But you have to keep in mind that we said earlier that we have a people here who is demoralized and are scared about their future because they've been told what their future is, and they are only too happy to see somebody new who's maybe bringing them the promise of a different future. Now, let's return to our earlier question about lack of communication. So if we look at Pasuk K, verse 5, he spoke to Korach and to all his company, saying, in the morning, the Lord will make known who is his and who is holy, and he will draw them near to him, and the one he chooses, he will draw near to him. Do this, Korach and his company. Take for yourselves censers, place fire into them, and put incense upon them before the Lord tomorrow. And the man whom the Lord chooses, he is the Holy One. You have taken too much upon yourselves, sons of Levi. What does this have to do with communication? If you notice, Korach made some comments. Moshe does not respond. By the way, it won't be terrible if we have a sense that Moshe is also a little guilty of not communicating directly, but he ignores what he said. He's not really ignoring it, but he's saying, all right, I'm not going to relate to what you're saying because I don't like your tone, but this is what we're going to do. We're going to have a test, and whoever God chooses, that'll be proof to you that I am not the one responsible for this.
Bracha,
Okay.
this reminds me of Elijah. Sometimes people need to see it, not just to hear it.
For sure, for sure. But now Moshe speaks and he says to Korach, please listen. Now he says this, please listen, sons of Levi. Is it not enough that the God of Israel has distinguished you from the congregation of Israel to draw you near to him, to perform the service in the Mishkan of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them? In other words, you are Levian, and you have been doing certain things. He drew you near, and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you, and now you seek the kahuna as well, the priesthood. Therefore, you and your entire company who are assembled are against the Lord. For what is Aaron that you should complain against him? So now, Moshe spoke and he accuses them, but he's also not waiting really for an answer. And now something interesting happens. In verse 12, Moshe sent to call Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliab from the tribe of Reuven, but they said, we will not go up. It becomes clear that there now are two factions in this rebellion. There's Korach, who for the most part is upset with Aaron, in fact, that they are jealous that they don't have the zchuyot, the privilege of being the priest, and certainly not the high priest. Whereas Datan and Aviram, they are opposed to Moshe as a leader. Whereas Korach is concerned with the spiritual, we can say that Datan and Aviram are more concerned with the earthly. But both of them have hostility, and that what combines them, joins them, which is something we know can happen. So Moshe wants to speak to the two of them now. And what is their response? We will not go up. What are they assuming? They are assuming that Moshe is angry with them and wants to put them down, rather than thinking maybe he's looking for some coming together. And they immediately say, we will not go up. We're not going to take orders from him. Now, look what they say. These are these two brothers speaking to Moshe. Is it not enough that you have brought us out of a land flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the desert? Wow, they're referring to Egypt.
Egypt, yeah.
As the land of milk and honey. That you should also exercise authority of us. Again, questioning this authority. And then they go on. You have not even brought us to a land flowing with milk and honey, nor have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards. Even if you gouge out the eyes of those men, we will not go up. Now, you know that the Torah is very careful in not repeating words. So commentators look at this 14th pasuk and they say, it can't be that Datan and Aviram are merely repeating themselves vis-a-vis you haven't brought us to the promised land. What they're really saying here is, you're not doing right by us, and we don't trust that even our children are going to reach the promised land. That's how upset they are. Now, and when they say gouge out the eyes of those men, there are different commentaries about that, meaning we're not going to see what you have promised. Now, what is Moshe's reaction? Moshe was exceedingly distressed, and he said to the Lord, do not accept their offering. I have not taken a donkey from a single one of them, and I have not harmed a single one of them. What does a donkey have to do with any of this?
The donkey carried the goods.
So he's upset with them. All of a sudden, Moshe, who usually comes to everyone's defense, he now is feeling harassed, and he says to God, I don't think you should accept their offering. I don't think they're sincere. Why does he suddenly say, I have not taken a donkey from a single one of them? What he's doing here is, yes?
I think Moses wants to prove how clean he is. It's the same thing.
Exactly.
Like
He wants to show, and somewhere else he again does this, that you can't complain about me. I have done nothing wrong. I am unsmirched. At another point, we see that Moshe gives an accounting of all his affairs and monies. And he says this, nobody can point to something that I've done wrong. And that might sound a little arrogant. No. When you need to prove something, you say, especially if it's true, So,
you know, I was thinking an example. If a rabbi walks into a McDonald's just for a cup of water that he needs with the pill, the appearance for others, the rabbi walked into McDonald's. So you have to be careful of appearance. And Moses is clean. There is nothing that he can point out to.
yeah. So now let's go on and see again what Moshe continues to say. Moses said to KORACH, you and your entire congregation should be before the Lord, you, they, and Aaron tomorrow. Let each man take his censer and place incense upon it, and let each man present his censer before the Lord. There will thus be 250 censers, and let you and Aaron each take his censer. So each man took a censer, and they put the fire upon it and placed incense upon it. And they stood at the entrance to the tent of meeting with Moses and Aaron. KORACH assembled the congregation against them at the entrance to the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord appeared before the entire congregation. The Lord said to Moshe and Aaron, saying, "Disassociate yourselves from this congregation, and I will consume them in an instant." They fell on their faces and said, "O God, the God of the spirits of all flesh, if one man sins, shall you be angry with the whole congregation?" Now, what I want to point out to you, going back to verses 6 and 7, Moshe had already begun giving them instructions, but he was only speaking hypothetically, in case you don't change your ways. Well, he has seen that they have not changed their ways, and so the punishment is going to come about. Now, very interesting, verse 22, what the masses are saying here, God, are you really going to punish us? Now, what this points to is something that happens till this day. There were instigators, and they managed to persuade people to join them. And they're pleading, it's not our fault. We just didn't have the strength to not follow. Now that's another issue. We did not have what it takes to not be dazzled by the charisma of the leader. In this case, KORACH and Datam and Aviram.
Bracha, in
Now, yes, Michael.
line 22, the they fell on their faces. Are you suggesting that that's the congregation?
Yes, that's the way I'm looking at it, or more importantly, the way Nataf is looking at it in this case.
Because I would think it's more, since God spoke to Moses and Aaron, they responded by falling on their faces, and they stood up again for the congregation, as they've always done, and saying, please don't kill them all for one guy.
Good for you, Michael. But as I'm saying, I'm giving this interpretation. Maybe I should have said, but you know already that they're always, depending on the point you want to make, you bring up something. And next year, if I'm looking at the same parsha, just as you, I'm sure, do from parsha to parsha when you teach. Okay.
Bracha, just a bit of clarification. When in verse 19, when they talk about the congregation, is the Torah talking about the congregation of KORACH?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
No, it just means the 250 that are with him. Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, so let's go on. The Lord spoke to Moshe, saying, "Speak to the congregation, saying, withdraw from the dwelling of KORACH, Datam, and Aviram." Moshe arose and went to Datan and Aviram, and the elders of Israel followed him. So Moshe doesn't wait for them to come. He spoke to the congregation, saying, "Please get away from the tents of these wicked men, and do not touch anything of theirs, lest you perish because of all their sins." So they withdrew from around the dwelling of KORACH, Datam, and Aviram, and Datan and Aviram went out, standing upright at the entrance of their tents, together with their wives, their children, and their infants. Moshe says, "With this you shall know that the Lord sent me to do all these deeds, for I did not devise them myself." Moshe is again pleading with them to realize this is not his doing. If these men die, as all men die, meaning naturally, and the fate of all men will be visited upon them, then the Lord has not sent me. Meaning, if something's going to happen now that's going to kill you, it means I'm right. More importantly, God is right. But if the Lord creates a creation and the earth opens its mouth and swallows them and all that is theirs, and they descend alive into the grave, you will know that these men have provoked the Lord. As soon as he finished speaking all these words, the earth beneath them split open. The earth beneath them opened its mouth and swallowed them and their houses and all the men who were with Korach and all the property. They and all they possessed descended alive into the grave. The earth covered them up and they were lost to the assembly. All Israel who were around them fled from their prize, for they said, lest the earth swallow us up too. A fire came forth from the Lord and consumed the 250 men who had offered up the incense. So we have two punishments here. One, which we're more familiar with, the earth opening up and swallowing, and then the larger number from the fire. Now, what's interesting is, in which one of those punishments did KORACH suffer? Some suggest, because it's not clear, that he actually, because he was the instigator, that somehow he was punished by both. But again, as Nataf says, we're not really concerned with KORACH per se, but how things evolve with leaders and their communities and issues. Now, let's look at Bnei Israel's response to this. How do you think they react? Because there's a large group that is remaining. How do you think they would react after they see these people killed?
They were afraid, which is a natural.
They would be afraid? Okay, Gloria, I saw you trying to say something.
I just said they were terrified. That's the same thing that was just said, that they would have the same fate, because maybe they felt in their hearts that they were not really being as sincere as they should be also.
Okay, all
You
right.
would
And
think, you would think that they would now trust Moses and finally say, okay, Moses, we get it. God brought you to us and we're going to follow you. That's what you think would happen.
Exactly, Michael. Because if you go into the next chapter, which I haven't given to you, because I'm just going to read one or two psukim, but on the morrow, the whole community of the children of Israel, now, Marlene, it's Adat B'nai Israel, murmured against Moshe and against Aaron, saying, ye have caused the death of the people of God. And it came to pass when the community gathered themselves against Moshe and against Aaron, and they turned toward the tent of appointed meeting, and lo, the cloud covered it, and the glory of God appeared, etc., etc. They are not moved. They are not moved. Okay, now let's conclude with two constructive warnings that Rav Nataf, our author, gives. Yes, we encourage arguing. The only way to test the truth of our view is to measure it against another's, especially one who we expect will be critical. There's no point in talking to somebody that's just going to always yes you. The commentator Maharal explains this via metaphor. When a powerful man seeks out an opponent in order to demonstrate his own strength, he very much wants his opponents to exercise as much power as they can, so that if he defeats him, his own victory will be more pronounced. What strength is manifested when the opponent is not permitted to fight? There is something very significant to be gained in speaking with each other and even arguing with each other for the right reason. Secondly, he says the following about charisma. The charismatic individual's easy successes teach him that he has the ability to convince others of his opinions and ideas with much effort. Even if he starts, and we've mentioned this before, even if he starts as a humble man who wants only to advance the group's interests, he inevitably notices that his charisma has the potential to advance his personal interests as well. Moreover, the potential rewards are almost as limitless as the list of what other people can do for him. As such, it may be no coincidence that these seducers of the masses are often discovered to be seducers of
Interesting.
women as well. Interesting.
You rest your case.
Charisma can be a wonderful means for obtaining good and noble ends, but the strong moral will required to completely avoid the temptations available via its misuse is extremely, extremely rare. And finally, charisma isn't the only thing to be wary of. It is easy to be swayed by slogans like "you are holy" that seek to seduce us with unrealistic expectations and flatter us with false compliments. Who doesn't want to hear that he is holy and thus doesn't need any leadership? Messages that are too good to be true usually are. Leaders know how easy it is to convince people with such messages. But a truly wise public will not expect these messages from proper leaders. It will seek a leader who takes honest but difficult positions rather than popular and easy ones. So, there we have it. So, do we understand why Pirkei Avot says that KORACH and his Eidah were involved in a machloket, an argument not for the sake of heaven? Is there anyone who would like to disagree? And I realize, no, I mean it. Does anybody see it differently? Don't be afraid. First of all, none of us are in the same room.
Okay, Bracha, if I recall, there is some discussion that there are some elements of KORACH's argument that have been recognized as positive, and that some of his children took it along after him, but in a more respectful way.
There has been some talk, and I'm forgetting his name now, but a rabbi from, I think, about the 15th century who did see some good in KORACH, but what it does is it reflects what was just said, that there was a time that KORACH was a good guy, but then the more he got involved with this, it was very hard for him to resist. And that is the problem. We've talked about that in saying how some people we would like to see get involved with politics stay away from it for fear that they won't have what it takes to not become corrupt.
Bracha,
Yes, that's
think of power as kavod. And we are taught by our fathers, those who chase honor runs away from them. אדם הרודף כבוד, הכבוד בורח ממנו.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Two things are suggested also why KORACH succeeded in gathering the people that he did. One of them, just to mention this, is again that they were desperate to believe that there could be a different type of future, but also that Moshe, ever since he went up on Mount Sinai, he became a superhuman for Bnei Israel, and so he became unrelatable. Just something to think about. Something to think about. So, on that note, I just want to share one more thing. When I was out earlier talking about motives, but I don't know why I need to share this with you. I had brought some bread, bought some delicious bread, and it's in this bag. I then went into a store that I guess is like Party City or whatever, I forget what it's called, those kinds of, looking for bags for Mishloach Manot. But there was already a lot more for Pesach. And so I found myself not buying because I didn't like the bags for Purim. I bought, I don't know if you can see this. Is it backwards?
Yeah, it's upside down.
You're gonna have to take my word for it. This is a runner to be put on your table and it says Chag Pesach Sameach.
Right.
So I just had the bread in my hand and then I bought this. That was my dilemma. I'm so thrilled that I really don't have to explain it to you. I had another bag and you will never know if I put the two into the same bag. Anyway,
Then you
okay.
Paper kosher.
Be well.
Thanks,
Stay
Bracha.
healthy.
Thank you,
Yes.
Bracha.
Thank you, Bracha.
Take
Wonderful.
care.
Great discussion today.
We
As
will.
always,
It's
wonderful.
interesting. Next week, it is already Purim
Right,
for you Wednesday night.
right.
But in the city that I live, I want to be sure, now that I've told you that I might have mixed bread and Pesach, that it is not Purim in Jerusalem on Wednesday night. Okay? All right. Be well.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Mr.
good week,
Cohen.
Bracha.
Have a good week. Shavua Tov.
Right.